Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to How to Get Hired. I am Bill, the company's expert, if I can not stumble over my own name. Thank you for joining me. This is the weekly live stream where we talk about how to get hired. And the title of today's episode is Why You Didn't Get the Job. We're going to talk about what happens if you apply for something and you don't get it. What's going on behind the scenes, you might be wondering. We're also going to be talking about why should I hire you? The job interview question, why should I hire you? What's the best answer for it? This is episode 94 of How to Get Hired. Just having people call me on the phone like right before I'm supposed to go on to a live stream. So that's always wonderful. Something I picked up from my boss at the time many years ago was his sort of policy for answering a phone, which was, you've got the call display. So if he didn't recognize your number, he would never take the call. And I adopted that ever since, like about 20 years ago. But I have a voicemail, so anybody can leave a message, but I only pick up calls that where I know you and I'm expecting your call. A bit arrogant, but you got to do that. You got to do that if you're called quite a lot. So that's the deal. So thank you for being here. We are going to get into this today. I have talked before about job rejection, about, when you apply for something, what the deal is. We're going to get into that. We're going to sort of talk about a lot of different aspects to it, what your situation might be and what's going on. Because I know a lot of people are wanting to understand what's actually going on from the perspective of the employer. What are they doing? Why are they not responding? And how you should feel about it. But before we get into that, I just want to say thank you to my YouTube channel members. You guys are awesome. And my Patreons and my super thanks donors. You guys are all equally awesome. Thank you for your support. That's why I continue to do this. And also to the participants, the people that show up to my live streams, because this is the way to actually ask me questions and get an answer out of me. Not the comments under the videos. It's just not possible for me to type out long answers, in real time. It's just not practical. So this is a Q&A. So if you're seeing my face, you should probably see a chat box or a chat prompt somewhere nearby. You can get in the chat. You can ask me a question. I will do my best to help you out. And we'll do that. But first, we're going to kick off with answering these two questions that are the title of the stream. The first thing we're going to talk about is the best answer to the job interview question, why should I hire you? Okay, let's get into it. Why should I hire you? This is a great question to be asked in a job interview. It really is. A lot of the questions that they'll ask you are usually traps. Like they're trying to get the dirt on you. They're trying to see if there's a red flag with you. And so they ask you this question to see if you'll sort of fall into that trap and give them something that will indicate that there's something undesirable about you as a candidate, right? Recruiters are trained to try and find out the risk factors of a candidate. And they use it by, being taught certain principles like past behavior predicts future behavior. So, for example, if you were fired from a previous job, the way recruiters are trained to think is that, then you have a higher likelihood of being fired from this job if we were to hire you. That's how they think. Now, there's some good reasons why they think like this. But as we all know, you can't set your watch to that kind of stuff. It might be true sometimes, but it's not true all the time. So they'll ask you questions to see if you have any of these risk factors. This question, though, why should we hire you or why should I hire you? This is not one of those. This is a great question. You want to be asked this question because they're giving you an open floor for you to make a case for yourself. Why they should hire you and forget about all the other candidates that they're maybe talking to. Okay, this is your opportunity to sort of make a case for yourself, make a pitch, right? And as I've said in the video, this is your moment to shine because it's true. Okay. So if I was asked this question in a job interview, the first thing that would come out of my mouth would be something like, oh, I was hoping you'd ask me that, just to sort of get some points and get some rapport, right? Because it's true. This is the kind of thing you want to answer. Now, I'm just going to skip to the end. What's the best way to answer this? This is what I would recommend. It's kind of a two-part answer. The first thing you do is you start out by saying, well, as I understand it, you're looking for someone who, and then you go down the job requirements, saying how you're going to speak to each one, saying how you either meet the job requirement or how it's not going to be an issue for you if you don't technically meet it. Okay. So for example, in the job description, they'll have said something along the lines of, we're looking for someone who has 5 years experience in this, who has this educational qualification and these skills, right? They're going to indicate that in some way, shape, or form. Usually it's going to be in a section called requirements that's in the job description. Or it'll just be sprinkled throughout the body of the job description, depending on how they've done it, right? But you see, what's going on is that recruiters are paid to find candidates who meet a list of job requirements. That's their job. Okay, they're not there to make a sort of objective judgment about you as, a candidate sort of holistically. They're there for a very specific purpose. Their job is to go out and find people that have this laundry list of things, right? That's what they're paid to do. They only technically get paid if they can do this, right? That's obviously an oversimplification, but that's basically what they're looking for. They're not the type of people that are going to consider the fact that you have something that they are not specifically looking for. You have something that was never listed on the job requirements, but you think that it enables you to bring a unique and new and exciting way of doing this job. They're not here to consider that. They're looking for the very specific things that they've been given by a hiring manager. Do you have this or not? That's the only thing that's relevant for them, okay? The only other thing that they would then look at is, do you have any red flags, okay? So they're looking for requirements. They're tuned in to look for requirements, and they're tuned in to look for red flags. Other job interview questions in the job interview deal with the red flags. This question deals with the requirements, okay? So the way you answer this question is you start making a case for yourself why you're the one they're looking for, on the basis that you've got all the things that they were looking for. And if you don't have something that they said they were looking for, it's really not an issue. Okay? So you start out by saying, as I understand it, you're looking for someone who, and then you go down the list. So you would say something like, well, as I understand it, you're looking for someone who has 5 years experience in doing this particular thing. Well, I've got that. I've actually got 7 years experience. And I also believe you're looking for someone who's got this educational qualification. I've got that too. I also have skills in this and this and this. And these are the things, by the way, that they mentioned that they said they were looking for, right? So as you say all this stuff, the recruiter is thinking, okay, awesome. I'm hearing this. I'm hearing that I'm looking for. I'm hearing this that I'm looking for. And you're really starting to sound like a fit. Okay? Because your reason why you should be in the job is because you have all the same things that they think the person in the job should have. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay? Now, what else can I say about this? Now, let's pretend that they've said in the job posting that they're looking for someone who has a very specific thing. Say, skills in, driving a forklift, skills in programming AI applications, whatever, right? Now, let's pretend that you don't actually have that, okay? They said they want someone who's fully qualified to drive a forklift, and you don't have that. Now, between you and me, if you've essentially indicated this on your job application, nowhere on your job application did it mention you are qualified to drive a forklift, okay? But yet they called you down for the interview. What that signals is that requirement that you have to be fully qualified to drive a forklift, that's not actually a requirement. It might be a nice to have, but it's not a deal breaker if you don't have that. That's what they've signaled by inviting you down to the interview anyway. Okay? Now, maybe what they're thinking is, okay, the person in this job is going to need to drive a forklift. Now, it would be nice to get someone who's already fully qualified in that, but it's not the end of the world because you can easily train someone in a day to do that. So if you got it, great. That counts in your favor. But if you don't, as long as you're open to doing it, and as long as you're highly trainable and you're a quick learner, that's okay. So they've signaled this by inviting you down. There's no way they would invite you down to a job interview if you didn't have this absolute essential requirement that they're looking for. What would be the point of bringing you down to an interview? It would be a waste of their time. You could turn out to be the most likable, most intelligent person they've ever met. But it doesn't matter because it's non-negotiable. They need someone who has this thing and you don't, right? So that's the deal. So let's pretend on the job description, they said, we need someone who is fully qualified to drive a forklift, and you don't have that. But when you answer this question after you've addressed all the other things they said they're looking for, you could say, well, I don't actually have a license to drive a forklift, but I have used this other type of industrial equipment in the past. Like I've driven a dump truck, or I've operated a scissor lift or a bucket, right? So I've done that, and it's never been an issue. I'm a quick learner, and I've operated very similar equipment, so I'm not anticipating any issues, right? So even though you don't actually have it, you're putting their mind at ease that it's not a big deal because you will be able to still perform very well in the role, even though you don't have that on day one. Okay? So that's how you answer the question, and you go down that list. Now, how do you remember the list of requirements? Well, I'm giving you permission to go to the job interview with a printout, a hard copy of the job posting. Okay, so you've printed that out, maybe at home or something. You got a piece of paper, and this is the original job posting. And what can be really handy is if you just take a highlighter and you highlight each of the requirements they said they were looking for. So when you go down to the interview, you can put that on the table. Presumably you're doing this at a table, not on the hood of your car or something. And you don't want to stare down at it the entire time, but you can just glance, just like I'm kind of doing to my notes over there, right? I'm just kind of glancing like that, right? And then you remember to specifically mention all the things that you have that they said they were looking for. And they'll be interested to hear this because they said they're looking for it. That's what they're wanting evidence of. Okay? The only other thing I would say, this is kind of optional now, if you want to really sort of outperform. The only other thing I would say is, try to show some enthusiasm for the role. And, you could end your answer by saying something along the lines of, well, I've always wanted to work in this role or work in this organization for this reason. I've always wanted to work in this type of role because, it gives me a chance to, work in the office and get some of the white collar skills, information or knowledge worker type skills. But also it gives me a chance to get out on, the shop floor or something and interact with that. That's been my background. So I can bring my old skills and bring my new skills to the same role. That's why I'm excited to work here. Okay, so you could say something like, I've always wanted to, work in this role for this reason. And so that's why I'm hoping you'll select me, right? Something like that. It shows a bit of enthusiasm. And this would be a very good answer. You're giving them exactly what they're hoping to hear. And you're showing some enthusiasm. You're developing a bit of a rapport. If you start off by saying, I'm so glad you asked me that, you're showing that you have the right attitude. There's several good things all in one package. So that's how I'd recommend that people answer this question if ever you get asked this. And they can ask it to you in different forms. They might not use these words. They might not say, why should I hire you? They might say, what makes you feel qualified, or something like that, which is essentially, why should I hire you? You give the same answer. What makes you feel qualified? Well, I have this that you said you were looking for. That's why I feel qualified. What can you bring to this role? Right? It's the same question. What can I bring to this role? Well, I have this. That's what I can bring to this role. Right? What makes you think you're a fit for this role? Well, I've got this. You see, you can phrase the question many different ways, but basically they're wanting you to explain to them, to make a pitch for yourself, why you would fit in this role. So any question like that is a rephrasing of this question. Why should I hire you? Well, I've got this. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. That's what I would say to this question. In the chat, we have Sachin says, I left the job 4 months ago. Now I want to get the job, but I'm having a lack of confidence now. Okay, well, I'm sorry to hear that. Let's see if we can change that, Sachin, okay? Because we are going to get to the main topic of this live stream, which is why you didn't get the job, okay? This is, hopefully I can help you. A lot of people are wondering about this, especially younger people, especially people that, don't have a lot of experience applying for jobs and doing this, right? You send out a lot of applications and you don't hear back and you wonder what the hell is going on. Is there something really wrong with me? Maybe I should go jump off a cliff, right? This is the standard thing. Okay, let's get into it. Why didn't you get the job? Okay, here's what I'm going to do. We're going to talk about the job search process. We're going to talk about if you failed the application stage where you sent in an application, but you did not get an interview. We're going to talk about that. Then we're going to talk about if you got an interview, but you failed that stage, meaning that you didn't get an offer or you didn't get a second interview, whatever comes next in their process. Okay. And finally, we're going to talk about if you made it all the way to the offer stage where they made you an offer, but it was rescinded for some reason. Maybe you tried to negotiate, or something, and you didn't hear back, or they rescinded it outright, and you didn't get the job. We're going to talk about that stage too. So it's going to be sort of 3 stages. Okay. And before we even start, I'm just going to mention the psychological component a little bit, because that's kind of a big deal to most people. We're all humans, and this is probably why you're wondering this stuff. It's the psychological side, right? Okay, so briefly, I'll just say this. Okay. Rejection stings. It stings for everyone. This is universal. And if you're looking for a job and you're doing the job search process, you are going to get a lot of rejection. Everyone does. I don't care how brilliant you are. I don't care how many jobs you've had and how many times you've done this. You are going to get rejected a lot. You are going to get rejected for jobs that you are 100% qualified for. Okay? Like, get used to this. This is how this process goes. Okay? It's not a matter of, oh, I'm qualified, therefore I shouldn't be rejected. That's not how this works. Okay? That's what you're going to find. You don't have to take my word for this. But if you're experiencing that, okay, this is normal in the sense that it happens to everyone and it happens a lot. Okay? So, the first thing I'd have to say is, if you have ever worked in sales, you would understand this process more, because the way sales works is you throw stuff at the wall and some of it sticks and most of it doesn't. Okay? Imagine if you had a job where you're going door to door, would you like, and then you get the door slammed in your face, right? The nature of that job is that you might knock on 100 doors and you get 5 sales. Okay, that's the nature of it. Now, 95% of the time, you get rejected. It's a no. Sometimes it's a very polite no. Sometimes it's a very rude no, but it's a no, okay? But that's okay because on average, 5% of the time, you make a sale. And all you really need is 5%, right? So it just comes with the territory. This is kind of the same thing. The way job search works is that, you look far and wide, you apply to all kinds of different stuff. Some stuff, it appears to be a shoo-in, you're perfectly qualified for. It's maybe a job you've done the exact same job before, but, you get rejected for that. There are other jobs, maybe it's a bit of a stretch. You've never worked in that job before. You have some of the skills they say they're looking for, but you apply anyway. You get rejected for that too, right? Okay, so you're going to get a lot of rejection. That's just normal. And all you really need is one job, okay? So if you get rejected for 10 jobs, 100 jobs, 1,000 jobs, 10,000 jobs, it kind of doesn't matter as long as you get one when you need it, okay? So if you had a salesperson going door to door and they knocked on their first door and the person behind that door said no, and the salesman took it so badly that they took off their tie or whatever, if you can get a tie around your neck, they took off their tie, they threw it away, and they said, that's it, I'm no good at this, I'll never be any good at this, what's the use of even trying? And they gave up and quit their job as a salesperson. Would that be the right thing to do? No, because if they persisted and did 100, they would get those 5 sales, and each sale would be, say, I don't know, $1,000. It would be like a big deal. And that's all you need. Okay? So you got to keep at this for a little. You can't control your feelings. All you can control is your actions. So you got to take care of your mental health. This is what I would personally recommend. Okay? If you feel rejected, if you've just been rejected from these jobs, go home, do something fun that evening. Okay? Like force yourself to watch your favorite TV show or read your favorite book or surround yourself with your favorite people. Just do whatever you need to do to feel better. I live in a very cold climate. I live in Winnipeg, Canada. It gets very dark here. It gets very cold here, especially in the winter. Put on some bright lights, put on your sweater, turn up the heat, whatever stuff you need to do that makes you feel a little bit better about things, okay? Figure out what those are and do them. Okay, don't just wallow in it. Because you are going to get rejected a lot. Just get used to it. Okay. But everyone does. You're not abnormal. You're perfectly normal. Okay. Play video games, play sports, whatever it is, force yourself to do it so that you just feel a little bit better about things. And then you get up the next day and you try again. Okay. That's what I recommend. The biggest factor in why you were rejected across the board is random chance. Okay. I'll say that because imagine 100 people apply for a job. They can only give the job to one person. 99 people are going away with a no. So that means statistically, you've got a 1% chance of getting that job. If 400 people apply, you've got a 0.25% chance of getting that job, statistically. That's just how this stuff works. The way you succeed is you apply for many jobs and you do the best job you can doing it. Okay? Right. Now let's get into this. We're going to talk about the 3 stages. The first stage is if you failed the application process. That means you applied, but you did not get an interview. Let's talk about that. Okay? Once again, the most likely thing that happened here is simply statistical probability. 400 people applied. 399 were going to get a no, and they could only hire one person. Even if they wanted to hire more than one, they met a bunch of people. They thought, wow, these people are all good. They could still only hire one. So 399 of the 400 are going away with a no. And you were one of the 399. Was it because you weren't qualified? Absolutely not. It's because it's just statistical probability, right? That's the most likely reason that you did not get an interview, okay? The second most likely reason, in my opinion, okay, this is where we get into other reasons. The second one is that the recruiter just is ignorant of what is qualified, okay? One annoying aspect of job search, if you're dealing with recruiters, is that in most cases, recruiters themselves, they're not qualified in the job that they're hiring for. So therefore, their sort of opinion of which candidate would be more qualified than which other candidate is usually out to lunch. Okay? That's usually what you're up against here. It's a crapshoot. Sometimes you get a good recruiter that has a clue of how this stuff works, but a lot of times you don't. Okay? That's just the reality. So you could be perfectly qualified, but for whatever reason, their opinion of what qualified looks like differs from what you have. That's not your fault. You are qualified for it. Just that these people are out to lunch. Okay? Now think of it this way. Would you really want to work for these clowns if they don't really understand anything about the job and they're hiring all the wrong people based on it? Probably not. But that is a thing that happens behind the scenes. Okay? The third reason, okay, that is the reason why you were rejected is some type of political thing going on behind the scenes. This is very, very common too. Okay. Now, under this umbrella of political stuff, you have things like they have an internal candidate that they're thinking of promoting, but for whatever reason, they're looking externally also. Sometimes it's legitimate. Sometimes they're honestly looking to see, is there any external candidate that, is that rivals our internal candidate that could be better, right? They're honestly looking for that. Other times it's really political and they're just going through the motions of pretending that they're looking externally when they're really not. Their mind is closed to they're hiring their internal candidate. And you just walked into that. There's no way to detect it. There's no way to see this from the outside. That was just what was happening behind closed doors on the other side of the table. Okay? So you walked in. There's nothing you can do. You did nothing wrong, but that was what was going on. Okay? You could have been the most qualified person. You could have been more qualified than their internal candidate, but their mind was already made up. People were friends with other people, right? You walk into it. Okay? Can't help that, right? The reality is that just like you have the freedom to work anywhere you choose or not work anywhere you choose, you can quit. They have the freedom to hire who they want, especially if it's a private company that's not taking money from the government for any reason, right? They can hire who they want, just like you can work anywhere you want, right? I mean, both sides have legitimate cases here. It just didn't work out. It was just not the right situation, okay? Nothing you can do about that. There's also more insidious stuff that can happen there too. For example, it could be a fake job. Okay, they posted a job and they said, we're hiring for this position and we're looking for someone who's got this, but that's false. They're not actually hiring. There isn't actually a position available. It's all an illusion. It's all, if you want to be harsh, you could call it a scam, because it kind of is. And it's just an excuse for them to do labor market research to see who's out there, who's looking for a job right now, what types of people are looking for a job, how easily are these people to find, how many of them are there, right? Sometimes it's a little bit more legitimate. They're saying, we're trying to cover our bases because if we have a star employee that quits, we want to be able to replace them very fast. And if we already kind of know who's out there that's qualified, we can immediately bring them in, right? So, I mean, I'm not defending them, but I'm saying that does happen sometimes. Okay, so it could be a ghost job, right? That's another thing that's real. But to summarize, The most likely reason is simply statistical probability. There's nothing nefarious going on. It's just that 400 people applied. That means 399 are going away with a no, and that includes perfectly qualified people like yourself. Okay, maybe it was a first come, first serve thing, or maybe, the recruiter lost the first 100 applications and then they started looking at application number 101 onwards and you were in application number 99, something like that. There's no way of knowing, but that's the most likely reason. Okay, now what can you do if this is the situation you're in? Here's what I would say. Okay, number one, make sure that when you're, first of all, make sure you're customizing your resume. People hate hearing that. They really do. They don't want to hear that they have to customize their resume to every job because that's a hell of a lot of work, right? I know this, and I know you know it too, but it is so ineffective to have like a just sort of general resume that you use for every job, especially when you're dealing with jobs that aren't at the management level. They're like at, work professional level or worker level, your entry level, right? You're going through recruiters. Recruiters are very fickle. They want the exact words that they used, right? So, so make sure you're customizing your resume, and when you customize it to using the same words that were used in the job posting to describe the qualifications. Okay, so if they said we're looking for a motorized forklift driver, you might think that's stupid. Nobody calls it that. It's a forklift. It's not a motorized forklift. It's a forklift. So you put forklift driver on your resume. Well, that's not what they wanted to hear. They wanted to see if you were a motorized forklift driver, because they're dealing with an idiot recruiter that doesn't understand that a motorized forklift is the same thing as a forklift. They didn't know this, so they insist on only looking at candidates that have motorized forklift in their resume, right? So they would have rejected you out of hand if you had just said forklift without saying motorized forklift. Stupid, but that's what we find, right? You got to match their words. Keyword matching, that's what that's called. Okay? Use their terms, their lingo. Another reason or another thing that you can do that will help you in this situation, that could possibly be the reason why you were rejected, was the risk aversion element. It wasn't the qualification side of things. It was the risk side of things. Now, maybe in your resume, it discloses that you've got a work gap, or maybe you've got, you've been job hopping. You take a job and then 2 months later you take another job, and then 2 months later you take another job. That can tip them off as a red flag, right? So you would try and minimize that stuff on your resume. Okay? If you suspect that one of those things is maybe the reason why you're being rejected, try a couple of applications that fix that don't include all the jobs in your job hopping thing, or that don't, put all the, you're kind of unclear about the dates on stuff if, you're self-conscious about a work gap, something like that, just to see if you get different results. Okay, that's what I'd recommend. Maybe you put your salary expectations right on the application. Maybe they demand that you have a salary requirement that they need to know, and that's pricing you out of the market. Okay, maybe try lowering that just for the application. You can always renegotiate that later, but maybe start like adjusting how you answer that question, just to see if that you start to get different results. Okay. What else would there might be under that risk thing? Maybe your experience is too diverse. You were a cook for 2 years, and then you were a plumber for 2 years, and then you were an auto mechanic for 2 years, and then you were an insurance salesman for 2 years. They look at this on your resume and they're like, you got the qualifications, but you got a lot of other things on here that really don't apply. And the way they look at it is they look at that as a negative. And they say it's diluting the fact that you do have what we're looking for, but you've also got all this other stuff that we don't need. So I'm sorry, you're overqualified or you're not a good fit, right? So you can experiment with that. Take stuff off that's really not relevant. The only reason that would be on there a lot of times is because of the human ego. We're proud of it. We want it known that we have this. Well, if that's counting against you, you might want to experiment with removing it and seeing if things change. Okay? I'm just saying. Okay, but if you're not getting interviews, that's the likely reason. And this is kind of a general idea of what to maybe do about it. Okay? Let's move on to the second stage. Let's say you're getting interviews, but you get an interview, but then they don't call you back. So you either don't get an offer or you don't get a second interview or whatever the process happens to be after the first interview. You're not going any further. Okay, so let's talk about that situation. Okay, why could you be rejected after doing an interview? What's the most likely reason here? Okay, first of all, the thing I said about statistical probability, that applies to pretty much every stage, okay? So that's usually the most likely reason. They will interview usually 6 candidates, sometimes 8 candidates on average for most jobs. There could be more, there could be less, but on average, it's about 6. So if they get 100 applicants, 500 applicants, whatever it is, if you're applying online, they'll select about 6 to bring in for interviews. Okay. Now you were one of the 6. Great. Awesome. Okay. But if there's 6 people that were brought in for interviews, 5 are going home with a no. Okay. So statistically, you could be one of the 5. It wasn't about, you're not qualified. It was just they decided based on silly human flawed criteria that they wanted some other person instead. Right? And just so you know, don't feel too bad about this because it's a total crapshoot. I've had to be a hiring manager for many years, and I've also been on the other side of the table early in my career and in the mid kind of stages of my career, and it's a total crapshoot. It has nothing to do with you being qualified. Job interviews are about being likable, really. That's what they're about. Being qualified was the application stage. The only people they invite to interviews are people that, on paper, look fully qualified to do the job, right? So that's not the issue anymore. The only time that would be an exception is if they found out that you lied on your resume and you are, in fact, not qualified, right? That would be the only time when that would matter in a job interview. They're starting with the assumption that you are qualified. You could do the job. The question now is, do they want you to be the person to do the job or somebody else? You could do it, but do they want you to do it as opposed to somebody else, right? Now, if you go in there and, you're argumentative or you're just, you look like angry or it just doesn't click. They say something to you and you misinterpret it. And then you say something back to them and they don't understand it. There's, some communication issues there, interpersonal skills, or just the culture difference. That's going to be a deal breaker, right? You're qualified, but that's why you didn't get the interview. Okay, so if you were called for the interview, you did an interview, but they didn't call you back. Number one reason, statistical probability. You're one of the 5 of the 6 that were sent away with a no. Okay, so what do? Nothing. You're doing everything right. Okay, you got the interview. As long as your interviewing skills are good, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. Okay, it doesn't mean you did anything wrong. Okay, they were looking for someone that's extremely high strung, or they were looking for someone extremely mellow and calm. right? You have no way of knowing what they were looking for. You go in there, you know, you could either be yourself or you could try and be some super version of you, but you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. So it has to just magically align. Serendipitously, you just happen to have exactly what they were looking for. And that will happen for you. It's just random chance. Okay? So there's a lot of stuff with personality that they look for. Okay? Usually they're looking for the wrong stuff, just so you know. People, not me, but people that have doctors of business that work in universities that study this stuff, they found that out years ago. Job interviews are highly, highly ineffective for selecting the candidates that actually end up outperforming, right? This is what they have a ton of data on. Why do we do it? It's because there's no real alternative that's practical. There are other ways, but they're so labor intensive and expensive that they don't do them. So we're stuck with this. Okay, so they're just happen to be looking for, personality elements. They might have hidden elimination criteria, stuff that they are actually looking for that they didn't tell you about. Maybe they're looking for someone who likes dogs. That was never mentioned on the job description, right? So you go down to the interview and they say, "Do you like dogs?" And, you say, yeah, I guess they're okay, but I don't have a particular affinity for dogs. I've never owned a dog. I have nothing against them, but, and they go, "Okay, no problem. Well, thanks for letting us know." And meanwhile, you've just eliminated yourself, right? It would be stupid why they would eliminate you on that type of question, right? But they do, because they have little wants, wills, and needs. And if you disclosed what you were looking for, people would game the system, right? They would all say that they were all dog lovers, whether or not they were or not. So that's why they didn't disclose that. There's no way to anticipate the stuff. There's no way to hack it or game it. It's just luck of the draw. So don't feel too bad. You're not doing anything wrong. The next time, you will come out on the right side of questions like that. It's just a matter of random chance. Okay. Risk aversion. Okay. Once again. Now, a big thing here is salary expectations, right? Everyone hates that question. You go down to the job interview and they say, what are your salary expectations? And, most people don't know how to answer, and they waffle and they give numbers and they give ranges. And, maybe some of them have done their research before and they find that the market price for that role in that region is a certain amount. So they say the market price, thinking that, that must mean that's what I'm worth, which it doesn't mean at all. In which case, unbeknownst to you, you said the wrong thing and they eliminated you based on that, right? That's a whole topic in and of itself. Okay, I've got a video coming out soon where I talk about that. Their assessment of your qualifications changed. Okay, so on paper, it looked like you were qualified, but then they brought you in for an interview. They asked you a couple of questions about what you had on your resume. They said, this work experience here, this job you had here, what did you do in that role? And you say something completely not what they had understood that job was by reading your resume. So they go, okay. So you see, now they feel that you're not qualified based on hearing you talk about what you actually did, right? There's a chance that could be the reason. That's not usually the reason why people are eliminated, but it is technically a thing that does happen. Okay. The thing that complicates it is that they often use that as a kiss-off reason for your rejection when they do give you a reason. It's not genuine, but they got to say something, so they'll say that because it's safe. They can't reveal the real reason why they rejected you, and that was like, we were hoping, we were looking for somebody taller, right? Or we were looking for somebody a little bit more friendly that I had more rapport with, right? It's very hard to defend reasons why you don't hire someone because they all sound petty, right? So if they ever do give, first of all, they mostly don't give feedback. And when they do give feedback, it's usually misinformation. It's usually not the reason. And in which case they'll say something very safe, like this, okay? Okay, but the most likely reason is random chance. Now, what can you do? Those are some of the reasons why you might have been rejected after an interview. What can you do about this? Here's some things you can do. Okay, failure of soft skills. Work on your soft skills. That's what job interviews are all about. They're not about your technical qualifications. That's what the application stage was all about. This is about soft skills, okay? And you can see this when they end up hiring people that have the gift of gab and they've got a lot of charisma, but really they're really not that qualified for the role. I'm sure you've seen that before. That shows you what goes on in this process. If you go in there and you're comfortable and you're friendly and you're enthusiastic and you're happy to be there and, you're essentially acting like their best friend and they love you, things go well for you usually. Okay? So work on your soft skills. That's the only thing you can really do, right? Okay? Keeping in mind that in most situations, there's nothing you can do because it's just random chance. But on the off chance it isn't, these are some of the things you can do. Number one, work on your soft skills, okay? Work on being likable. It's the single biggest thing you can do. Maybe your appearance or your attitude, okay, was a little bit off. Like, you need to be more agreeable. Maybe you came a little bit across as a little bit arrogant when you were talking about your qualifications. Just a personal tip. Don't go down to a job interview and act really kind of arrogant. Oh yeah, I got this, I got that, I got this, I got that. So I'm in demand. Don't act like that. There's temptation to do that. I understand. I myself have done that in the past, to my shame. It's usually not the thing to do. It won't go well for you. Okay. It's much better to be a little bit more humble. Okay. You say what you have and you say what you can bring to the table, but you're not too cocky about it, right? Acting like, oh, I'm a shoo-in for this. You know what I mean? Don't do that. There's a fine line between making a pitch for yourself and feeling that you're valuable, but crossing the line into being a little too cocky and arrogant about it. Okay. So just what really helps is doing mock interviews with another person, friend or family member, anyone. It's better than rehearsing alone, okay? Even if you got to resort to a family member, it's still better than not doing mock interviews, okay? Language barrier could be a thing, okay? This is very real. I know what it's like to interview in not your native language, okay? Can be very hard, especially if you're in a situation where you're moving to a new country or something like that. It's, but this is real. It's for practical reasons. It's not all about prejudice. There are practical reasons in there too. Sometimes there's prejudice, but sometimes it's legitimate because if people can't understand what you're saying, that's a big hindrance to how effective you can be. Okay. Communication skills. This goes beyond any kind of language barrier. If you communicate to somebody what's going on, and you need to for your job, but at the end of that interaction, they're offended, or they're frustrated, or they're confused, that's not going to go over too well, okay? What you want to communicate to someone in such a way that even if it's bad news, or not what they were expecting, they still feel okay about you. They still feel okay about them and the situation, right? Because if every time someone has an interaction with you and it annoys them, things are not going to go well for you, okay, in the long run. It's not a good sign. So this is why we have to work on communication skills. Okay, you have to be polite. You have to respect etiquette, protocol, okay? That kind of thing. Okay, you have to have the right attitude. Even if what you're doing sucks and is stupid and is pointless and is annoying and these people are off-putting, you still have to communicate with people in such a way that, you know, they don't get like offended or angry every time they deal with you. Okay? A lot of technical people, they have a blind spot for this. This is the single biggest thing that gets them eliminated. Okay, is they just have this blind spot for how off-putting they are. You have to artificially overcompensate by being super polite and friendly. Okay? Even though in a job interview, you really don't feel like it because you're hating every moment of it and you think these people are morons, right? So you have to be able to do this on demand. You just have to. Okay? That could be a reason why this didn't work. You were qualified on paper, but their reaction was, after just meeting you, they were left with the impression, I don't want to work with this person. You know, they're too sullen, they're too serious, they're too kind of off-putting. It feels like if I have a disagreement with them, they're going to get angry. You know, like I don't want that. Why would I want to work with a person like that? I want to work with people that are going to make me feel good. You know, we all got to be here, right? I want to go home content at the end of the day, not like, you know, berserk, not like so angry that I could just tear someone's head off. Okay, and then finally, the obvious thing is that you could have just given the wrong answers to questions, in which case it was due to unpreparedness. So, you know, that's a no-brainer. Just you need to practice for job interviews like you would practice for anything else. Just being qualified for a job doesn't mean that you're going to interview very, very well. Interviews are something completely different from being qualified for a job. So maybe some of your frustration results from that. And if it does, I get it. It's stupid. The whole thing is really stupid. But, you know, if you want to work within that system, you have to conform to that system. It's painful, but, you know, hopefully you do the interview, you're qualified, and then you'll never have to see those people ever again. And your boss is awesome to deal with, right? It's a necessary evil. I will get to questions right after I finish this, which will be coming soon. Okay, so that's the second part of 3. That's if you were rejected from an interview. You got the interview, but then the process ended there. They did not call you back. That's what we were just talking about. Now we're going to talk about the third of 3, where this situation is where you applied for the job, you got an interview, you passed the interviews, however many there were, and you got an offer. So you got to the offer stage, but that's where the process ended for you. They either rescinded the offer or they did not call you back. Okay, so let's talk about that. Okay, so usually the way this process works is you get, like some jobs, they have one round of interviews. In which case they talk to 6 people or so, and then they just offer the job to whichever one they prefer. What's common for a lot of jobs, especially at the professional level, like if you're above the entry level, okay, and you're at the worker level or the professional level or the management level, like especially the management level, but even at the professional level, the worker level, you may get more than one interview. It might be like a screening interview first, which is kind of quick and dirty. They ask you some basic stuff. And then you get a more in-depth interview, right? Sometimes the screening interview is done remotely. It's like on the phone or it's on, you know, a Zoom call or something. Sometimes it's a physical face-to-face interview. Other times, you know, you get a full-blown face-to-face interview first, and then they do it again, but with different people. So you have a second interview, but with more people or different people. I once had I got hired for like an executive job. I had 9 interviews. It's 9 interview process. So I got the job, but yeah, it can be ridiculous. Okay. But anyway, so you went through the interview process and they gave you an offer. They said, here's our conditional offer. What do you think? You know, if you could just sign it. A lot of people will try to negotiate something, right? Maybe you tried and it didn't work. So what's going on? Okay, the standard process for this is if there's more than one round of interview, usually they do something called a final three. That is that maybe they do a first round interview, they bring in like 8 people or something, and then they'll do a second round interview where they bring in 3. So of the 8, they bring 3 back, and then they have their final 3. And of those 3, they extend an offer to one of them. Okay? That's usually when you're dealing with management jobs. That's also professional jobs usually do that. And any job where they bring in an external HR person, like an external recruiter or something, where the recruiter doesn't actually work for the company that you're that's hiring. Okay, so, and the reason for that is that interview at the end, where they have the final 3, that's attended by the client, which is the employer. The first interview, the employer is not there, just the recruiter, and the recruiter is acting like an agent. Okay? But you'll do the second round, which is the final 3. Now, what's going on there is that sometimes what they do is like they figure these 3 candidates, they're all contenders. You know, we really don't have a problem hiring any of these 3. They could all do it. We're okay with all of them. You know, like it really doesn't matter too much between them because they're all good. But we only have one job up for grabs, so we have to extend an offer. So sometimes what they do is they'll offer their number 1 candidate, they'll say, here's the offer. Okay? Now, if that lead candidate tries to negotiate at all, some employers will say, okay, well, never, you know, they won't get back to you. And instead, they'll extend the same offer to the candidate number 2. Now, if candidate number 2 says, you know, we got a deal, you know, and they sign it, here you go. Then the employer says, okay, well, we're going to rescind the offer from number 1 because we got candidate number 2. And candidate number 2 didn't want more money or more benefits or more sick days, or they just signed it. So we're going with them. Because all 3 of you guys, all 3 of you people would have been fine. We don't mind. You're all qualified and we'd have no problem working with any of you. Okay, so sometimes you're up against that. That's a thing that happens, okay? Why weren't you number 1? Random chance. You did nothing wrong. They just happened to be looking for some weird, quirky stuff and you didn't have it. Maybe they were looking for someone that they wanted to exploit. And for whatever reason, you seemed a bit too tuned in or a bit too savvy. They felt they couldn't really pull the wool over your eyes. So sorry, we're going to go with someone else. Right? You really have no control over this and no way of knowing. Okay? Personal preferences, highly illogical hidden elimination criteria. They're looking for all kinds. I did a video that's one of my most popular videos. It's got millions of views where I talked about a candidate being rejected because they were asked, what sports team of these 2 teams do you prefer? Now, unbeknownst to this candidate, the boss was a big fan of like team B, right? But the candidate said, well, I like team A. So in the absence of any other clear reason to eliminate these people, because they were all qualified, they said, okay, well, I'd prefer to work with someone who's rooting for the same team as me. Right? Silly, right? But that's what we sometimes encounter. So as I say, I mean, you've done nothing wrong. It's just this is the kind of thing that's going on behind the scenes, okay? There could be political stuff, okay? Sometimes the final 3 idea is used simply to make one candidate look better. They will contrast one or both other candidates against candidate number 1 that's really the one that everyone expects to get it, right? The recruiter could have strategically placed candidates that don't look that good simply so it makes candidate 1 look better. That has been known too. It's a stupid thing. I mean, yes, it's things like this that contribute to this process being totally ineffective or highly ineffective. Okay, so there could be all kinds of political things going on there that you would have no way of knowing. You just stepped into it, right? You just walked into the situation, right? Okay, now let's talk about some things that that you do have control over. Okay, everything I mentioned so far, it's out of your control. You're doing nothing wrong. Just keep on trucking. Keep on keeping on. Some of the things that you may be responsible for are the following. Okay, maybe you decided to play hardball with them over compensation. Okay, you tried to negotiate salary above their reservation price. Okay, reservation price is like, your reservation price is the lowest you would ever accept for a job, and their reservation price is the highest they'd ever pay for a job. It's their limit, right? So if the highest they could ever pay for this job would be, say, 100, and you said, no, I need 120 or no dice, it's like, okay, well, I'm sorry, it just doesn't work, right? We'd like to hire you, but we just can't. It's not that we won't pay you that. We can't pay you that. I'm sorry. So they go with someone else, right? So you have to be able to read the situation, and negotiation is a whole other topic. I'm not going to get into it here, but that could be a reason, okay? If you're desperate for a job, the conventional wisdom is don't negotiate. Just, if this is what they're offering, just accept it and send it back. Say, yeah, great, we got a deal, right? If it's really not good enough or not what you're wanting, then you can continue your job search while you're working for them. Okay, that's the reality of it. Maybe you signaled back to them a lack of agreeableness. Okay, so what that means is that they give you an offer, and you come back and you say, no, absolutely not. This, I'm going to need this. That has to change. We're going to have to change that number. The benefits are unacceptable. Sick days are unacceptable. Use of company car and travel arrangements, that's unacceptable. Remote work is unacceptable. You're too argumentative. And they think like, okay, this seems like it's going to be a long, painful process. I'd rather not. We're just gonna not, we're gonna go with someone else that is a little bit more agreeable. Okay, so that is also a thing. Usually, when you negotiate, you pick one, maybe two things. It's like, I'm gonna need this, I'm gonna need that. If you're okay, we got a deal. You make it easy for them. Okay. What can you do? You can just learn how to negotiate. Bone up on how to negotiate, how negotiation works. Okay, and that's the solution to that. But that's the end of that scenario. Okay, so we've covered 3 scenarios where you might be rejected: at the application stage, at the interview stage, and at the offer stage. So the recurring theme here is that the vast majority of the time you've done nothing wrong. It's just statistical probability. And incidentally, that's usually why you end up getting a job that works out, is statistical probability. You happen to show up at the right time, at the right place, and you just happen to have the little quirky, niggly things that these people just happen to be looking for, and you are the best candidate. And they offered it to you, and it worked out. Like, it just chance, okay? This is a numbers game. And everybody gets rejected a lot. The secret is to have quantity. You have a lot of leads, a lot of opportunities, a lot of interviews. And for each thing that you try, you do a high quality application and interview and negotiation. Okay, it's like quality, it's quantity and quality at the same time. Kind of a tall order, I know, but that's the reality. Okay, take care of your mental health. We have no control over how we feel. Sometimes understanding what's going on behind the scenes helps, because you realize, like, you did nothing wrong. It's not that you're unemployable. It's not that you're doing the wrong things or you said the wrong things. It's just that these people are not looking for that. And they could be looking for something completely out to lunch, and that's what we see a lot. So don't feel too bad. Just make sure that you're doing the basic stuff correctly. Okay, so whatever stage it is that you're faltering at, do the things at that stage, like cover the basics, like I mentioned as I was going through this. Okay, so that's basically what's going on. Hopefully that was helpful to people. Hopefully, you're not feeling too bad. And the other thing I'll say is that if you tire of this silly process of applying for posted positions on the internet, where you apply with like a billion other people, you go through a recruiter who uses ATS software like to filter resumes so they may not even get to a human before they're rejected. And then you do these silly interviews with recruiters that don't know the first thing about the job that they're hiring for. And you got to go through rounds and rounds of interviews and all this kind of stuff. And you absolutely are sick and tired of this. First of all, you're not wrong to feel that way. You're absolutely right. Secondly, if you don't know it by now, there are alternatives. You don't have to go through this process to get a job. There are alternatives. For whatever reason, when I start talking about the alternatives, people tend to tune out. They're not interested. But I've done videos before on the hidden job market. I've done videos about networking. You don't have to go through this. The most common way that people get jobs is through networking. Now, don't take my word for this. If you don't agree with that, look it up yourself. If you go to the people that have jobs now and you ask them, how did you get your job? They're not going to say, I applied cold on the internet. They're going to say it was some form of networking. Either I have a coworker that worked here that recommended I apply, or I reached out to the company. They weren't hiring at the time. They didn't have a job posting, but I reached out to, the head of the department that does this, where they could employ someone like me. It'll be some variation of networking. So there's alternatives where you don't have to do this process if it's really not working for you. Okay. You should do it, but maybe do other things at the same time. And one of them will work out. And there we go. That comes to the end of this topic, this long-winded topic. Thank you very much for your attention. Let's go over to the comments. I see there's 42 people here. You guys are awesome. Thank you for tuning in. Let's see what you guys have been saying. Okay. Okay. Where did I leave here? Okay. So Johnny Bright says, I'm having trouble because I'm 41 and haven't had to get a new job for a long time. And now everything's different in job searches and interviewing from the ways things were done when I was taught. Well, I got good news for you, Johnny. It's actually not any different. The fundamentals are all exactly the same. It's just that the superficialities have changed. And as I said, you always have the same alternatives available to you. You don't have to go through this process, what I call the standard process. In fact, most people don't. They reach out to organizations, and it might be a good opportunity to learn about that. Then you don't have to learn this stuff. You know what I'm saying? I would still try and do it because it should be like one arm of your job search campaign. But I would not recommend that people exclusively just do this, just apply for posted jobs on the internet and go through this aggravating process. I could give you a bunch of statistics, like what is it? All the jobs that you see posted, that's only 20% of the jobs that are actually out there. The other 70 to 80% of the jobs that are actually out there are not posted, but you can put yourself forward for those if you know what to do. Okay? So the fundamentals haven't changed. It works the way it's always worked. It's just that, some of the names and the tools and things have changed, but they're mostly with this process that we talked about, applying for posted jobs. Edsa says, hi, I had an interview last week. I asked if there was any reason they would think I was not a fit for that position. They were surprised by the question, but replied there wasn't, but was rejected. Yeah, like I said, they never give honest feedback. They usually never give feedback, but when they do give feedback, occasionally it's usually misinformation. It's usually not the whole story. It's not the real reason.
because it's very hard to defend the real reason why people are rejected. And if you've ever been in a situation where you've had to hire someone, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's like a lot of people show up and most of them are perfectly fine. Like there's no reason why you couldn't hire them or you wouldn't want to. It's just that you got to pick one, So, these people are like neck and neck. I mean, how do you decide? It gets very illogical and very petty and very stupid, You know what I'm saying? And to be fair to these interviewers, maybe at the interview, at that moment, they actually didn't know that they were going to reject you. And if so, for what reason? Like maybe they hadn't talked to each other or something at that point, right? It could also be political. 2 of the 3 people at the interview liked you, but the third one said, wait a minute. You guys got to pick the last 5 people we hired. I want this one, and I pick a different candidate, right? And so those other 2 people, even though the majority of people wanted to pick you, they felt, okay, yeah, that's true. We did pick the last 5, so you get this one. Like silly things like this. Okay, the only thing you can do to try and get objective feedback is to do mock interviews, okay, like with friends or family members, and then ask them for feedback. And if there's anything obvious, hopefully these people will tell you if it's obvious. If it's not obvious, then it's perfectly fine. It's just a matter of fit. Everyone loves that, right? Christine says, IKK. Awesome. I don't know what that means. I'm old. I'm not the internet generation, really. So, Louisiana to Texas says, I like your channel. You have helped me tremendously. Well, thank you, Louisiana. That's where they have Mardi Gras. You like party until your city is completely destroyed, right? That's my understanding. With the occasional, tornado monsoon that like roars through there and levels the place. That's the impression I get, but it's good. I'm glad you're doing fine. If you're in Texas now, all I can say is yippee-yi-ki-yay. You'll know what that means. Unconventional advice that works. Hey, I know you. You've been back here a couple times. Says, yes, job interview questions. It's gone to the dogs. Anybody ever watch The Muppet Show? The continuing story of what was it? Continuing story of a quack who's gone to the dogs. MS says, in 2024, the main question is remote or in office, even hybrid. It's never easy to understand and can knock you out. Yeah. Well, let me ask you something, MS. What's the right answer? It would be in office, probably, right? So just say that and get the job and then see what you can do afterwards. You could try that approach. Right? Get the job and then push for more, right? As opposed to just, I want this to be perfect, but then you end up with nothing, right? At least you'll be employed while you're looking for that perfect position, right? Now if you absolutely couldn't do in office and working remote is a deal breaker, what I would be wondering is what the hell are you doing there? Why, like if this was an absolute requirement for you and you did not state it, but they're expecting to hire someone that, will be in office, right? Why would they bring you in would be the question forming in my mind. If you are open to it, then just say, I'm open to it. And then you avoid that elimination trap, right? You see, what you can do, I know this is kind of underhanded, but what you can do is things like that. Like usually what people do is they use this regarding vis-a-vis salary, where they say like, this is our range. Are you okay with that? And then they say that in the first interview and you say, sure, yeah, I'm okay with that. Somewhere in that range is fine. And then you get, down the process, you get to the offer stage and they pick you and they give you an offer and they say, here's our offer. And, at that point, they've got skin in the game. If you reject the offer, it is embarrassing for the recruiter who recommended you. it extends the process for them and it causes them pain. So they will likely agree to little things just so that they can get this process moving. Like, let's just get this offer signed and then it's done. You know what I mean? So that's where you can turn around and say, well, now that I know a bit more about what you guys are looking for and what this role is going to involve and the dynamics of the company and the culture of the company, I've thought about it and I'm going to need this. Right? And at that point, it's a little bit harder for them to say no. If they can do it, their temptation will be just to do it so we can just put this to bed. Right? So that's also a tactic. Right? So if it's remote or in office, you're technically open to both, but you really want to do remote or something, maybe you could possibly get away with doing it like that. But I stand by what I said, like get the job and then push to work remotely. Maybe as it turns out, they allow some of their employees to work remotely and, you might have to work in office for the first 6 months, but then you push for doing the remote thing and they'll give it to you. Maybe it's a small price to pay in the long run or something like that. Okay. Love Supreme says, as a recruiter, I've seen people talk their way out of a position by revealing unnecessary information, not answering. Yeah, I agree. Question asked, appearing smug, which runs the hiring manager the wrong way. Yep. Aditya says, a rough roadmap for mastering soft skills. Well, you can find that quite easily. If you're already on YouTube, there's tons of resources on YouTube. There's on the wider internet, there's even more stuff. But here's what I would say. Okay, if you're younger, this might sound kind of weird, but look at managers, look at executives. Like, listen to how they talk, the types of things they say. For example, they're usually not dropping F-bombs left, right, and center. They're usually not saying stuff that it's reasonable that people could be offended by, even if it's like, a reaction to bad news or somebody says something to them that's like, they're basically saying no. What's their response? Do they get instantly upset? No. Generally speaking, these people try and be likable, especially if you work in sales. Like, when you call up a company and you talk to an executive that's in charge of the sales division, chances are they're not going to bite your head off. They're not going to be really off-putting. They're not going to be, hey, how did you get this number? What do you want? No, click, right? They're going to be, yeah, hey, how's it going? What can I do for you? They're going to be someone that you would want to deal with, someone you would enjoy dealing with, right? If everybody who has to deal with you, Aditya, if anyone has to deal with you, if every time they deal with you, they go away thinking, wow, I love that guy. That guy's awesome, right? That's a good thing. Things will go well for you, right? So when we work in a job, right, you're going to have tons of interactions with people all around you. Usually your boss, usually your coworkers, but other people too. You're going to be delivering good news. You're going to be delivering bad news, right? That's just a fact of life. But if every time you deliver bad news, people get really upset and they end up hating you, that's going to be a problem, right? So in a nutshell, your goal should be, after everyone interacts with you, whether they meet you in a job interview or they're just like asking you a very quick question at work and then they're leaving, any kind of interaction, they should go away thinking, that was easy. I like that guy. I would like to deal with that guy more. If you have that effect on other people, things tend to go well for you. People come to you with opportunities. People want you to participate in whatever they're doing. People want to include you. People want to hire you. People want to promote you so that you work more closely with them, right? Okay, that's a really big thing. So all sort of soft skills kind of point to that goal, really. Being easy to deal with and being someone they would want to deal with, in a nutshell. Okay. So do your own research, like bone up on that stuff. Learn some of the theory and then try practicing it in your life. And if you can keep doing that, sooner or later, you're going to be a pro and it's going to pay off. Unconventional advice that works says, as to, do you have any questions for us? How about, is there a strong internal candidate? Well, listen, generally speaking, okay, you know what I just said, right? I was talking to Aditya. I was saying you want to make people like you, make their interactions with you feel easy, and they go away thinking, I'd like to interact with that person again, right? Now, if you ask in a job interview questions that make them squirm, you say something like, oh, I hear your company has had some bad press lately. I hear there was a scandal with the CEO. What's going on with that? Like they might be like, okay, well, they don't want to, they can't really speak freely about it. And it's kind of embarrassing. And, they don't want to get into that. So they're kind of squirming a little how to respond to that. They don't like being asked that, right? You could ask them a question like, what's the worst aspect of working here for you? What is it that really bugs you about working here? And they'll be like, they can't really speak freely, so they give you some lame diplomatic answer that's, sort of repeating the company blind kind of thing. They won't enjoy that. So they will not look upon you as favorably. You're the candidate that really put the screws to me and gave me a hard time in the interview, right? So this is kind of one of those, like, I know you're talking to me, but come on, let's be honest. Do you have an internal candidate that you really want in this role? They won't enjoy being asked that, right? They will not give you a truthful answer either way, right? If they'll say no, right? Whether or not it's a yes or a no in reality, right? And they won't like being called on things like that, right? Nobody does. If you were in their shoes, you wouldn't like being taken to task over that. So it's kind of pointless because they're not going to give you a truthful answer anyway. So why make them feel worse about you? Why give them a worse experience? It doesn't benefit you by asking questions like that. I understand that we all want to know stuff like this, but asking them directly is not the way to find that out. You will not be able to find that out in the vast majority of cases. Okay, so don't blow your interview over, trying to find out when you probably can't. David says, can you mention some of non-obvious red flags that recruiters consider and the applicants may miss? Okay, well, the only common ones to me they seem pretty obvious. Like, if you've been fired from a job, right, that's a red flag because they believe the principle of past behavior predicts future behavior. We all know that that's sometimes true, but not necessarily, right? But they take that to a fine art. They're trained to regard past experiences as like that's why they're asking about your past. What do they care what you did with some other company like 5 years ago? It has no bearing on what you can do for them now. They're asking it because for the precise reason that if you had a bad experience with them, then you're likely to have a bad experience here. If you had a great experience with them, then you're more likely to have a great experience here, right? So anything bad, anything negative, okay, that's a red flag. If you badmouth anyone, you say, like they ask you, what's the worst boss you ever had and why didn't you like them? Like that's a trap. That's an ambush type question because the moment you actually answer it and give them what they asked, you fail, you lose. Because if you're the type of person that's going to badmouth a previous boss or coworker or anyone, then that signals that you're likely to badmouth these people if they were to hire you and work with you. That's the type of person you are. That's what you're revealing, right? So don't say anything negative in an interview. Those are pretty big ones. My feed just jumped. Work gaps. Like this is why I said earlier, most people don't go through recruiters to get jobs. You might be surprised at that, but do your own research. Don't take my word for it. You see, recruiters regard work gaps as a red flag, because if there's a period of time where you weren't employed, they know that they'll never really be able to know for sure what the reason for that is. Like if they ask you why was that, the reason you give could be just a lie. You could invent something. So they know they're not going to really know for sure what was the cause of that. But they say, well, if no one wanted to hire you in the past, maybe there's a reason for that. In which case, there could be something wrong with you as an employee, and maybe we should just leave you be. You would be of a higher risk that you wouldn't work out, right? That's how they think. It's past behavior predicts future behavior, right? Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm not agreeing with these. For sometimes, yes, it works out like this, but a lot of times, no. And we all know this. That's why if you're changing careers and you don't have relevant industry experience, you don't go through recruiters. Because recruiters, the obvious thing is that they'll look at your resume and they'll go, I don't see any experience here of, the role that we're hiring for here. And you say, well, of course not. I told you I'm changing careers. And they say, okay, well, how could you possibly think you could do this job if you've never done it before? So I'm sorry, no dice, right? But we all know that a lot of people successfully change careers all the time. And the reason they do that is they don't go through recruiters. They go to a hiring manager, and the hiring manager says, after speaking with you, it's clear that you have a good head on your shoulders. You know your stuff. You're great to deal with. You're on the ball. So I think I'm going to give you a chance. I think you could pull this off, right? Right? That's how that works. Recruiters can't do that because all recruiters look at is the metric of years of experience. Like how many years of experience do you have in this? And if you say 0, they conclude, well, then you clearly don't know, you clearly couldn't do this job, which is incorrect most of the time. Anyway, that's all I'll say to that question. There's a whole lot of stuff there. There's like a whole universe of things to talk about there. Lysolana, Lorwyn. That sounds familiar. I think you've been here before. What if they won't reveal the price that you won't plan on negotiating? Yeah, you can expect that. They're not going to reveal. It would be like playing poker with somebody who said, okay, here's my cards, right? Yeah, I'm not going to show you what's in my hand. You have to guess. If you're asking for something, you don't know if I can pay that much, right? That's why this is a challenge, right? Now, the other thing that complicates it is that when they give a range, a lot of the time, the range isn't real. The real range is even further beyond it. But they don't want you to know that, right? There are exceptions. If it's government and if it's a highly regulated industry, there's exceptions to that. But if it's a private company, and they can put whatever the hell they want on a job posting, they'll put whatever the hell they want. They'll put what they want you to think. Right? I mean, it wouldn't be the first time a company said, times are pretty tough. We can't pay that much right now. There's a recession on, even when there isn't. And then you get somebody for cheap, right? And the recruiter or hiring manager goes away going, right? Right? They got someone for cheap. That's why you have to do your own research, right? And the thing is, I'm not going to get into how to negotiate here, but I will say this one thing, and that is that negotiation is based on options. The more options you have, the more power you have. So if you've got 3 offers at the same time, then you could afford to say, no, I need this much money. You can't do it? Well, sorry, get back to me when you can, because you've got other things lined up, right? If you're desperate for a job and this is the only offer you've got, you really don't have a lot of power to negotiate. So, in that case, I would recommend you just take whatever they're offering. And then if you want to shoot for something better, you can. The only difference is that now you're employed while you're doing that job search. Okay? they won't tell you what's in their hand, right? This is an adversarial type thing. They're trying to get you for as cheap as they possibly can. You're trying to get them to pay as much as you can get them to pay. It's an adversarial thing. You have opposite goals. They're not your friend. They're your opponent. That's one reason why I do what I'm doing on this channel, because I feel that a lot of people that are talking about this stuff are recruiters or ex-recruiters. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's some really great ones out there. But it's funny how they always advise you to like play right into their hand. Just be honest. Tell us everything we're wanting to know. You know, it's like, no, you're my opponent here. You're trying to get the dirt on me. I'm trying to not give you the dirt on me. You're trying to get me for cheap. I'm trying to get you guys to pay me what I'm worth. That's what's going on. Thank you, Jessica. It's a very nice thing to say. Robert, but Robert's got an accent aigu on it, so Robert or something. Robert says, tomorrow I'll have a second round technical interview. They said I can't really prepare for that. With that being said, how can I prepare? That's awesome. Well, look, I don't know what they've got planned. I don't know what industry you're in or what job you're in. I mean, it's hard for me to give you really precise advice on that one. But all I'll say is that usually, generally speaking, second interviews are when they take a closer look at you. Okay. So the first interviews are like more like a sort of screening interview. They just check some basic stuff, check obvious things, right? But they don't really go deep. The second interview, the purpose of the second interview is now they're taking a much closer look at you. First of all, I mean, I don't know if they're planning to put you through skill testing questions or aptitude tests or psychometrics or whatever they're planning. But a general rule is if you've told them stories, if you've told them things in the first interview, don't change your story for the second interview. Sometimes they intentionally ask the same questions again just to see if they get the same answer or you've changed your tune, you know? Do you have experience with this? The first interview you say, yes, I've got 2 years experience. I did this part of that job. Second interview, they say, do you have experience with this? And you say, no, not really technically. Right? It's like, red flag. Right? Always remember, I don't care if it's a technical interview, be likable. If this is a technical type job, you're going in there with a bunch of engineers in sweatpants, okay? You're going in there with a bunch of, software engineer types in sweatpants, right? With food stains down the front of their shirt. If you're going in with them, be likable. If you're a technical person that they could put in front of their customers, that's valuable. Most technical people, they know their stuff, can't put them in front of the customers. These people are in sweatpants. These people don't understand etiquette, protocol, salesmanship. They don't understand, representing the organization in a very professional, polished, attractive way. They don't get any of that, right? And if you do, and you've got the technical chops, that's something really special. Okay, so I don't know what job you're going for, but that's kind of just a general rule. Hopefully that helps. Leo Sunshine says, if you're in a toxic work environment and you're making plans to transfer to a different department, let them think you're losing when you're in fact winning. Okay, sure. Unconventional advice that works. Good point. Don't ask questions that make them squirm. Yeah. Leo Sunshine continues, one of the greatest lessons I've learned while working in an office setting is to never show your weakness because bad leaders will use them against you. Yeah, well, what would be even better is to get the hell out of the toxic company and go to a company where you can achieve more of your potential. That would be a perfect scenario. Sakab says, as a fresh graduate, how do I describe myself? And my major is human resource management. Thank you. I don't know. How do you describe yourself? I don't know you, Sakab. I don't also know the context in which you would be describing yourself or who you're talking to. So it's pretty hard for me to answer that. How do I answer the question? Tell me about yourself. My major is human resources. Then you need to come back this afternoon because I have a live stream. Wow, I got a live stream in 20 minutes where we're talking about that question. So stay on the line, okay? Because if you look, that's what's scheduled on my channel. A live stream called Tell Me About Yourself, how to answer what's going on in the recruiter's mind when you answer this question. My favorite named person, Lysolana Lorwin says, I mean the offer that they won't plan on revealing. That's what I understood. What if they won't reveal the price that you won't plan on negotiating? I mean the offer that they won't plan on revealing. Yeah, that's what that is what I was addressing, I believe. Right? Like they're not like you're talking about, I assume you're talking about compensation, you're talking about salary ranges or something in a job offer, and you don't know what their range is, you don't know what they can pay, but you're wondering whether you should negotiate with them and try and push for more. That's what I'm assuming the situation is. Good afternoon to NC Worker. Awesome. Well, there's 33 of you guys here. Thank you for joining me today. It seems like we got to the end of the live stream. I will be back in 20 minutes to talk about, I have another live stream called Honest HR Nitrous. That's where we talk about some of the realities of job search and some of the silliness of it and what's going on. The stuff that I feel that personally, I just get the impression that a lot of recruiters won't talk about. You know, some of the contradictions in this process. So join me for that. In the meantime, you guys are all awesome. If you have experienced job rejection, which I'm sure you all have, everyone does, okay? Number one, just know this, okay? You're not doing anything wrong. In the vast majority of situations, when we get rejected, it's not because we've done anything wrong. It doesn't mean you're unemployable. It doesn't mean that you have no skills or no value. You have a lot to offer. You're highly employable, okay? In some cases, you might have to bone up on some of the basics of, how to write a resume and like how to do an interview, how to answer some job interview questions. But beyond that, if you got that covered, okay, you're doing fine. You just have to either get back on the horse with this process or investigate some of the other ways to get jobs where you go around this process, okay? Now, for anyone who's interested, I always got to say it, I got some courses here. Get this course if you are just totally lost on how to get a job, okay? That's where it's like all my advice, all in one place, logically, step by step, principle by principle, from beginning to end. Get that. That also talks about networking. If you're interested in learning networking, how you can do networking as an introvert, okay? That's what I've put in there. And it's basically a method that I've used over many years and that I've built a consulting business doing. So, I mean, it does work because I've done it. If you want to learn business, either to get a promotion or to be better at your job, check that out. That's the best bang for the buck you're going to get on learning business, okay? There's links in the descriptions to all of these. And if you want to learn executive communication skills, the high-level communication skills that will enable you to be a contender to get upper management jobs, if that's where you are and that's what you're interested in, okay, you want to like learn some of those techniques of how you do things, check out that, okay? It's about writing, but it's also about what to say and how you handle different situations. So links in the description, check them out. I've also got videos explaining these courses so you can see exactly how they work and what you're getting before you pull the trigger on it. Those are also linked down below. You guys are awesome. I wish you nothing but the best, and I will be back in pretty much 15 minutes. So take care of yourselves.